The Qing dynasty, spanning from 1644 to 1912, maintained an imperial system where hierarchy defined not just governance, but also the intimate world of the Forbidden City's harem. Within these secluded palace walls, the emperor's consorts were ranked according to status. Each rank determined their power, privileges, and daily existence. Hi everyone! Welcome back to my channel. Today we explore the intricate hierarchy of the Qing dynasty's imperial harem, uncovering how the distinctions between the palace women's ranks shaped their lives within the Forbidden City. At the top of the harem's hierarchy stood the Empress Dowager, the emperor's mother. Her authority often surpassed that of the ruling emperor, especially if she was his birth mother. The Empress Dowager wielded unparalleled influence, overseeing imperial court matters and the harem's internal affairs. She possessed the power to arrange marriages, promote or demote concubines, and even countermand the emperor's decisions. A prominent example is the Empress Dowager Cixi, who effectively controlled the Qing Empire from behind the scenes for nearly 5 decades. Any woman seeking power in the palace had to align with the Empress Dowager or risk her formidable displeasure. Even the Empress, the highest-ranking woman during her husband's ruling, was subject to the Empress Dowager's overarching authority. Directly beneath the Empress Dowager was the Empress, the emperor's principal wife, and the official head of the harem. She held significant influence, managing the harem's daily operations and serving as a key advisor to the emperor. As the emperor's principal wife, she alone was honored with the title Mother of the Nation, a status that carried both prestige and responsibility. Her attire and privileges reflected her status. Bright yellow was exclusively reserved for the emperor, but the empress wore a distinguished lighter version, symbolizing her elite position while adhering to strict court protocols, and was typically entitled to up to 10 palace maids and eunuchs to attend to her needs. However, her power was intricately tied to the emperor's favor and the political dynamics of the court. An empress who failed to secure the emperor's affection or produce a male heir could find her position precarious, especially if rival consorts gained prominence. Directly below the empress was the imperial noble consort, a title of exceptional prestige. Unlike other ranks, there could only be one living imperial noble consort at a time. While some consorts were posthumously granted the title of imperial noble consort, it was also awarded during their lifetime to women who gained significant favor, making it both a functional and symbolic honor. The imperial noble consort received an estimated annual stipend of 800 taels of silver, up to 8 palace maids, and enjoyed the privilege of wearing imperial-approved colors, including certain shades of purple. Her ceremonial attire and entourage were far more elaborate than those of lower-ranked consorts, emphasizing her elevated status. Despite its prestige, this title was often more symbolic than functional, as it was usually bestowed under special circumstances, such as to honor a consort's legacy or to recognize her exceptional service to the imperial family. The noble consort was a more commonly held title, typically granted to concubines who had earned the emperor's favor. While it ranked just below the imperial noble consort, the differences in the status were significant. A noble consort received an estimated annual stipend of 600 taels of silver and was typically attended by up to 8 palace maids. While she was permitted to wear elaborate attire, certain ceremonial colors remained exclusive to the highest-ranking women in the harem. Despite this, a noble consort could wield considerable influence within the harem, particularly if she retained the emperor's affection. Many historical records and popular media, such as Empresses in the Palace, illustrate how noble consorts played pivotal roles in court politics and harem intrigue. Yet, no matter how beloved she was, the noble consort's power was still subject to the authority of the Empress and Empress Dowager, who ultimately dictated the power dynamics within the palace. Beneath the noble consort were the consorts, each receiving an estimated annual stipend of 500 taels and typically attended by up to 6 palace maids. While their material privileges were only slightly less than those of noble consort, their influence within the harem was significantly more limited. With so many higher-ranked consorts vying for favor, a consort often found herself overlooked unless she possessed remarkable talent or secured powerful alliances. Below the consorts were the concubines, who received an estimated stipend of around 400 taels and were typically served by up to 6 palace maids. The transition from concubine to consort were one of the most difficult advancements within the harem's hierarchy. Many women remained at the concubine rank throughout their lives, unable to ascend further due to the intense competition and the emperor's limited attention. Descending further in the hierarchy, we encounter the noble lady. Despite the seemingly prestige title, their status was relatively modest within the imperial harem. Each noble lady received an estimated annual stipend of 200 taels of silver and was typically attended by up to 4 palace maids. Unlike higher-ranked consorts who enjoyed private quarters, noble ladies often shared living spaces, limiting their personal authority and influence. The path to promotion for a noble lady was difficult. Advancement depended heavily on gaining the emperor's favor, which was a rare occurrence given the multitude of higher-ranked consorts vying for his attention. Consequently, many noble ladies spent their entire lives in this rank, their existence within the palace marked by relative obscurity and limited power. Beneath the noble ladies were the first-class attendants and second-class attendants. These women occupied the lowest tier of the harem's hierarchy. Their annual stipend were so little that it barely covered their daily necessities, and they were typically attended by only 1 to 3 maids. While these attendants were technically part of the imperial harem, their roles were primarily focused on serving higher-ranking consorts and fulfilling specific duties within the palace. However, opportunities for personal interaction with the emperor were rare, and their chances of rising through the ranks were minimal. Many lived out their days in quiet servitude with their names and lives unrecorded in history. For those of lower-ranked palace women, financial limitations often meant a life of obscurity. But for women with status, wealth was more than luxury. It was leverage. In a world where favor was fleeting and competition was relentless, access to financial resources could mean the difference between influence and irrelevance. But if the palace provided for their needs, why did these women receive a stipend at all? The answer lies in how wealth shaped power within the Forbidden City. The emperor provided for his consorts basic needs, but in the Forbidden City, wealth was more than just comfort, it was power. A woman's stipend was not merely an allowance, but a tool for influence and survival. It allowed her to commission tailor-made robes, acquire rare perfumes, and fund temple offerings, each a symbol of status, and reinforced her place within the harem. More importantly, money could shape palace politics. A well-placed bribe or generous gift to a eunuch or palace maid could secure valuable information, protection from sabotage, or even discreet assistance in influencing imperial decisions. Yet, despite their stipends and access to luxury, harem women had little true financial freedom. Unlike noble women outside the palace, imperial consorts were forbidden from owning property, operating business, or earning independent income. Their fortunes depended entirely on imperial favor, and any financial influence they wielded had to be carefully maneuvered within the palace's rigid hierarchy. Still, those who understood palace politics found ways to circumvent these restrictions. Some secretly partnered with eunuchs, one of the few groups permitted to leave the palace, using them as intermediaries for financial dealings beyond the Forbidden City. Others cultivated alliances with higher-ranking officials by discreetly supporting their families, and some funneled money through trusted relatives to secure their son's future or sway court decisions. The most powerful women, such as the Empress Dowager, could even manipulate imperial budgets, redirecting funds towards their favored causes. Although most consorts remained dependent on the emperor's generosity, a select few mastered the art of influence without direct control. Their wealth, though hidden within the palace politics, shaped court alliances, determined succession struggles, and in some cases even altered the course of the entire empire itself. But before a woman could ever hope to wield power, she first had to pass the imperial selection. a process that determined not just who entered the Forbidden City, but who would have a future within it. Every 3 years, unmarried girls from Manchu banner families, typically aged between 13 to 16, were required to present themselves for selection in the Xiongnu process. This system, designed to reinforce Manchu dominance in the court, excluded Han Chinese women, though some Han palace maids could rise in rank, and in rare cases a Han woman was selected as a consort, either through imperial decree or by exceptional favor. Overseen by the Board of Revenue, the selection process began with directives sent to banner officials across the empire who compiled lists of eligible candidates. These young women were judged on beauty, demeanor, and health, but family background often determined their fate. Daughters of noble or high-ranking officials were favored, as imperial consort were not just companions, they were instruments of political alliances. Beyond beauty and noble lineage, refined skills in calligraphy, painting, music, and Go were highly valued. Though each emperor had his own preferences, some sought consorts from powerful families to consolidate or rule, others prioritized personal attractions or loyalty. Once chosen, the selected women left behind their formal lives, entering the palace's cloistered world with little hope of returning home. Selection alone was just the beginning. Most women started at lower ranks, and fewer ever rose to the true prominence. Upon arrival, they endured rigorous training in etiquette, poetry, and palace protocol, mastering the unspoken rules of survival within the imperial hierarchy. Even noble-born candidates had to navigate politics carefully. One misstep could change their fate. For those without the emperor's favor, life was a quiet existence of isolation and duty. Lower-ranked women spent their days performing repetitive tasks, their movements strictly regulated by palace protocols. But in the harem, favor was not the only path to power. Lineage was just as critical. The birth of a male heir was the defining moment in a consort's life, securing her influence and status. Yet, this also introduced new dangers. Succession struggles were fierce, and the palace intrigue was ruthless. Some consorts forged alliances, others manipulated court politics, and some resorted to desperate measures to ensure their sons' survival. The imperial harem was more than just a world of luxury. It was a battlefield hidden behind silk and ceremony, where survival required strategy, resilience, and the ability to outlast rivals. Few women ever truly escaped its constraints. And even those who did found that power was fragile, always at risk of being taken away. The Qing dynasty's imperial harem was more than a social structure. It was a microcosm of the empire itself, where rank dictated survival, alliances determined power, and favor was the most valuable currency of all. History often romanticizes the wealth and privilege of the harem, but behind the silk and splendor lay a world of duty, isolation, and relentless competition. For every woman who rose to prominence, countless others faded into obscurity, their names lost to time. Yet their lives offer a rare glimpse into the unseen struggle of the Forbidden City, where ambition, intrigue, and the pursuit of power shaped not just the fate of the harem, but the entire empire itself. What are your thoughts? Is there anything else you're curious about in the imperial harem? Let me know in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video.
Stay curious, stay magical.